Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into something absolutely revolutionary today. We're unpacking a curriculum from the Building Steward Academy, and let me tell you, it completely flips the script on traditional property management. Instead of just treating residents as, people who pay rent every month, this program empowers them to become credentialed property owners. And it all revolves around one incredibly powerful three-word mantra: train, license, grow. We're going to see how everyday folks are given the actual tools to climb the ladder, from a tenant to a trusted building steward to a developer apprentice and ultimately all the way to a homeowner. So, here is our roadmap. We're starting with the Steward Covenant. Then we'll shift into seeing like an operator, navigate the business of buildings, explore boundaries and housing law, and finally, take that big step from credit to keys.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the Steward Covenant, where we build the foundation. I want you to meet Joel. He's a first-year building steward. He absolutely loves his neighborhood, and he's looking to build a real future there. Now, the covenant that Joel signs is essentially a promise that clearly defines his role. A steward is a trusted resident caretaker and a documentation partner. This definition is absolutely crucial. Think of a steward as the eyes and ears of a building. But just as importantly, we really need to understand what they are not. They are entirely distinct from a property manager, a contractor, or a rent collector. They aren't going around changing leases, and they definitely aren't performing de-interest repairs. They are dedicated documentation partners, plain and simple.
When they're out there on the ground, a steward relies on 4 golden habits, and they have to run in this exact order: observe, document, communicate, and escalate. This structure is literally everything. Let's say a neighbor asks a steward to promise a specific date for a repair. Well, the steward knows that making a promise they can't personally keep is going to cost them trust. So by sticking strictly to these 4 steps, they stay hyper-focused on safety and accurate reporting, all without ever overstepping their authority.
Now, your documentation is really only as good as your ability to actually find it later, right? Take a look at this file naming format: date_property_area_issue. I know it seems super basic, but by strictly organizing photos and reports this exact way, a steward makes an entire year of on-the-ground work instantly searchable. Just imagine an owner or a lender needing to verify the condition of the roof over the last 12 months. Because the steward used this exact format, that reliable evidence can be pulled up in seconds. It builds an immense amount of trust.
Moving right along to Section 2, seeing like an operator, and really shifting that mindset.
To make this work, we have to completely shift away from a tenant mindset, where a leaky roof is just an annoyance that someone else needs to deal with. We have to move to an operator mindset, where that same exact leak is recognized as a direct threat to the asset. Notice the critical difference here between making an observation and making a diagnosis. A true professional steward records exactly what they see. They write, "Water is on the floor near the laundry sink." They don't just guess that the pipe is broken. Think about it. If you diagnose the issue and you're wrong, the property manager might send a plumber when actually, scratch that, they might have needed a washing machine repair tech. Precise observation saves a ton of time and money, making the steward incredibly valuable.
To really see like an operator, you've got to learn to read the building through these 8 core systems. A building isn't just a box with walls and a ceiling, it's a living, interconnected puzzle. When a steward walks the property, they're evaluating the envelope, the plumbing, the HVAC, the whole shebang. Why does this matter? Because tiny, ignored issues quickly snowball into major deferred maintenance. And as any seasoned operator will tell you, putting off a small $2 repair today pretty much guarantees a massive, expensive failure tomorrow.
That brings us to Section 3, the business of buildings. Let's navigate the numbers.
So the physical condition of a building, which our steward is out there meticulously documenting, has a direct and immediate impact on its financial survival. And it all boils down to net operating income, or NOI. This is your effective gross income minus your operating expenses. Seriously, this is the single most important number for a building's financial health. It tells us if a building is actually earning more than it costs to run, before any debt or reserves are paid. Every single property manager, owner, and lender looks at this. A steward learns this formula because the day-to-day physical condition of the property directly drives these exact numbers up or down.
And we have to recognize the massive difference between regular operating expenses and capital repairs. Operating expenses are just your monthly bills, paid right out of everyday cash flow. But capital repairs, things like replacing a totally failed boiler or fixing a collapsing roof, those are huge occasional costs. They absolutely must be paid from dedicated cash reserves. If a budget omits cash reserves, well, it might look highly profitable on paper. But in the real world, the second that roof fails, that building falls into an absolute crisis.
Then you have what I call the two quiet budget killers, vacancy and credit loss. Vacancy is an empty unit that's producing zero income. Credit loss is rent that is owed but is just never collected. These two factors prove exactly why a steward's job is so financially vital. A well-maintained building feels safe, it feels respected, and when a building is cared for, residents actually want to stay and they pay their rent on time. Good stewardship leads directly to resident stability, keeping units full and stopping these budget killers dead in their tracks.
Let's dive into Section 4, Boundaries and Housing Law, and how we protect the community.
As a steward gains influence and trust in their building, it's only natural that residents are going to start bringing them serious legal or lease questions. To protect everyone involved and prevent a massive legal headache, stewards rely on one vital safe phrase. They say, "I cannot give legal advice, but I can help you document the issue and connect it to the right office." Every steward memorizes this. It keeps them safely in their lane when they're faced with highly sensitive fair housing questions or eviction notices. The absolute kindest thing a steward can do in a legal crisis isn't to guess the law, but to provide a fast, warm handoff to a qualified professional.
Now, laws like TOPA, that's the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act out in DC, are incredibly interesting. When an owner decides they want to sell a building, TOPA steps in and gives the tenants the very first chance to buy it themselves. It's amazing. These laws act as powerful levers for building wealth and keeping it right inside the community, rather than just letting it be extracted by distant outside investors. A steward is specially trained to hear the clock start ticking on these rights and quickly route their neighbors to the proper resources.
And finally, Section 5, From Credit to Keys. This is the ladder to ownership.
This is where the whole train, license, grow philosophy truly pays off. We take all those rigorous skills used to manage a multifamily building and we apply them directly to creating and owning housing. By year 2 of the program, a steward can step up and become a developer apprentice. They learn how real estate actually flows, from finding a site to gaining legal control, testing the financial feasibility, and finally arranging the financing. An apprentice uses their deep, ground-level knowledge of how buildings break and function to help create brand-new, sustainable housing. It is a massive advantage.
Taking it down to the personal level, let's look at a resident in the program. We'll call her Tasha. Tasha learns that true mortgage readiness means looking way beyond just a simple monthly loan payment. It means budgeting for PITI. That stands for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Plus, she needs to set aside personal reserves for her own capital repairs. It's just like managing that apartment building we talked about earlier. Tasha learns that the exact same discipline that keeps a multifamily building alive is what will keep her future personal home safe and fully funded.
To actually get there, every single student builds what's called a personal ownership plan. They don't just sit around wishing for a home. They state their honest financial starting point. They define a crystal-clear ownership goal. They list the highest impact actions to fix their credit and build their savings. They set a timeline, and they name the exact programs they're going to seek help from. By building this plan, a credentialed steward turns the abstract dream of ownership into a completely actionable step-by-step reality.
So, all of this brings us to the ultimate question posed by the Building Steward Academy. Will you remain simply a tenant, just passively interacting with the building you live in, or are you ready to engage? Are you ready to train, to license, and to grow into a steward, an apprentice, and eventually an owner? The path to community wealth and personal empowerment is mapped out right here. The skills are completely teachable, the ladder is very real, and the only question left to answer is, are you ready to take that very first step? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this completely changes how you view the place you call home.